Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome. This is going to be a very exciting and engaging discussion. And we're going to keep it brief and short with our discussion because we want time at the end for Q&A. Does that work? Okay, very good, very good. First of all, I'm Dr. Karen Ivey. I'm Assistant Dean of Technology Studies at the University of Arizona Global Campus. I'm so excited. I would ask Dr. Hema, introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Hemachandran. I'm the Associate Dean for the School of Business and also the Director of AI Research Center at Woxsen University, India.
And my name is Dr. Rob Hopkins, and I'm the Assistant Vice Provost for Analytics and AI at Virginia Tech.
And I'm Dr. Maggie Mosher, and I'm an Assistant Research Professor at the Achievement and Assessment Institute for the University of Kansas. And we do AI and extended reality for middle school students with disabilities.
Very good. I'm so excited with this panel. Well, first of all, we know that AI is a powerful tool that not only is it changing our courses, but is also changing innovation in the whole education environment, as well as making it possible for more personal learning to take place. So we're going to start off with questions to Dr. Hema and asking you, when it comes to personalized learning in education with AI tools and also adaptive learning, what is happening? What's going on in that area?
Yeah, if you see that in a day, a person is using around 58 times they're seeing their mobile phone. And it's in 2024, if you see around 7.2 billion of people is using smartphones. By seeing that, we have to change the teaching pedagogy. Like traditionally, we use the teaching board and we've been doing that. But we have to change it into new pedagogy by implementing the technology oriented. In that aspect, AI plays a crucial role in this, especially for the personalized learning. If you take a single classroom, we have around 50 students in that. We can't find that all 50 students are the cream students. The students can be in the range of high, medium, and low level. So if we want to train all the students in the same level, then we have to have a personalized learning for them. In that aspect, we can give some kind of a gamified learning. As the previous session, also the same thing. We can have some kind of a gamified learning to the students so that they can learn a lot of things. If you see like a lot of, now we can see that ChatGPT is there, but if you can use the ChatGPT to do kind of any assignments, then there is a human intervention must be there to verify that the content generated by the ChatGPT is 100% right. So in that aspect, we cannot trust or believe AI as it is, where the human intervention is must to do that. And the same way, like when we do a personalized learning, where if you do that, as a professor has to take up the whole sole responsibility of creating a knowledge database for doing that and to share with the students. That is very important, a key factor. At Woxsen, we do the same thing, and we build a simulation games for the students to learn for each course. And also, we build an analytics platform using generative AI and metaverse. Because as know that most of the students are playing games in mobiles. So we use that as a platform, and we created an analytics oriented where the students can attend the quiz, and if they fail to get more marks in that, they can connect with the avatar of a particular professor, and he can have a lot of questions with them and can sort out the queries, and then once again they can take up the quiz and they can get up the knowledge. So this is what now the current training happening. And the next level, what you have done it, if in India, if you see that most of the people are Indians and the regional language are Tamil, Telugu, a lot of things are there. Even in other countries, students are coming here for the international exposure and they have been studying in our university. For them, they are not much familiar with English or much familiar with the regional languages. So we have implemented the multilingual. Like a student from Spain, they know only the Spanish. So we have made it in Spanish. If they want to learn the content in Spanish, they can click on the button, and so that the total content will convert into a Spanish and they can learn. That is what the advanced level is going up in the personalized learning things. That's it from.
Very good, Dr. Hema. So when it comes to personalized learning, AI provides a lot of good advantages for us, right?
Yeah.
We also have accessibility. Let's move outside of right in the course room to accessibility and assisting the student, as well as administrative efficiencies. AI brings a lot of those benefits to us as well. So Dr. Rob, when it comes to accessibility and when it comes to administration efficiency, what are some examples of how AI tools assist us there?
Yeah, sure. So my focus will primarily be on the administrative side because that's what my team works in. We don't do as much on the academic classroom setting. But at Virginia Tech, we developed a data analytics ecosystem using open source technology. We call it the University Data Commons. And within that environment, we have applications that range and do the analytic work from the descriptive and diagnostic phase all the way up to the predictive and the prescriptive phase. And we do that across a wide variety of functional areas, from human resources to resource management, to enrollment management, to financial aid. And I think I would like to highlight maybe three projects that we have going on. One is well developed, two are in the testing phases. So the first one that I might want to mention is we have a series of sophisticated machine learning pipelines that we use to augment and guide our enrollment management process. And that's from applications to offers to enrollment. And so we have in production a series of machine learning models that help answer the questions like, how many offers should we make? What should that offer look like? What should the compensation packages look like? And then as we proceed on, are the trends in the students following what we expect? And at that point, we would deploy another model, which would use a series of criteria and data that aren't available early on in that process. And we're benchmarking those daily tracking to what those machine learning outputs are. And as we go along, the data, well, the model gets more comprehensive, but more intelligent and more in tune. So we go from from more variance up front to less variant, to where we get to a critical point where we can make a decision. And instead of waiting until afterwards and saying, well, we didn't meet our goal, early on in that process, based upon what the models are showing and indicating and what the daily tracking reveals, we can very quickly help our managers move to decisions like, okay, we need to offer 368 more offers in a College of Engineering to in-state students across these 4 majors, and 40% of those applications have to be first-generation women. And they can do that level of granularity because the models are built that way, and that helps us manage those goals in a more sophisticated, precise fashion. Moving on to something that's in test, one is a case where we're using a large language model to classify faculty research. And we're classifying, it's a multi-label classifier. We're putting this research into different areas that are strategic priorities for the university. And the LLMs are far improvement over rather cumbersome keyword matches and queries, or even having people try to review the slew of output that's produced each year. And this is important for us because we have strategic plan metrics that are built around those outputs. So expediting that process has worked well. And the last one I would want to mention briefly is we're using an LLM in the admissions essay review process. So we have 2 human reviewers, but we're piloting using an LLM to produce a 3rd score. And the idea of modifying the LLM to produce that score is not to replace the 3rd reviewer. We didn't have one of those, but to allow us to have a closer look at those cases where scores are unusually high or scores are unusually low, or there's differences between those scores. And beyond just allowing us to maybe key in on the precise quantitative point the essay should have been at, we're able to use the large language model to try to understand and probe, why did that discrepancy happen in the first place? What does this indicate that we might need to do with their training materials? And what does this indicate that maybe we have to modify the rubric itself? So we don't want the AI to replace the scores, but we want it to augment and complement. So I would argue, using those three case points, that AI is not only increasing the administrative efficiency, but I would argue it's also increasing the quality of the work and the effectiveness.
That's very good. And very good three examples that you shared that your university has integrated as well. On the accessibility side of the fence, we have speech to text, right? AI tools assisting with that. And also we mentioned, Dr. Hema mentioned assisting with personalized learning as well. And so we've talked about inside of the classroom, administration, efficiencies, accessibility as well. Let's now talk about predictive analytics, right? And when we talk about predictive analytics, we're talking about using those analytics, the history of data, to then identify where we can, as a university, assist students as well who may be at risk or may need those personalized learning directions. So Maggie, you're in the research lab. You work with data a lot. Could you tell us a little bit about predictive analytics and how AI tools are assisting in that area?
Yeah, and I also want to make sure to talk about the safeguards of that as well. But predictive analytics have the potential to do unlimited things for us. Mostly, we want to look at how they can help us to really prevent dropouts, prevent students from deciding they can't graduate or they won't graduate, to prevent anxiety, depression coming, students feeling overwhelmed. It's to look at all of that data and take it and figure out, okay, here's our data. What can I tell you is going to work to help you to make sure you make it to the end goal? Now, when we're looking at predictive analytics, we have to determine also what we call success. So the predictive analytics to what success? Because success for our enrollment department is very different than success for the English professor, which is very different than success for the student. So students usually trying to get a job. The enrollment trying to keep students and keep them paying tuition. You know, the professor trying to get the papers in that they wanted. So what is success and how is it measured? Then that data, how often am I taking that data and where is that data going? At the University of Kansas, we have a few different projects going on, and one is on assessments and figuring out better ways to assess students, because we all know we have ChatGPT, we have Copilot, we have all of these options where students can put in information and get an output that typically was how we assessed. So retraining teachers on how to assess students requires us to look at, are there things we can be using to assess students that don't require any time taken away from teaching? So could we be using an app? We're currently developing an app that looks at how often you respond to questions in a collaborative group, how often you give the correct vocabulary in comparison to two peers in that same group, how often you understand, or when a question is posed, you pose back an answer. So some of that collaborative piece is going to be really important, because those are the skills that get you jobs. Can I communicate what I know to you, as opposed to, as my brother-in-law in the government, looking everything up and giving you an immediate answer because I know all the facts in the world, because I have my cell phone right here. So looking at how are we going to assess these, and then using those data analytics. Where did the data come from? Is the data just being compared from one student to the same student? So am I just looking at my progress over time? How often I get a certain score on a test, how often I answer questions, how well I do in each class grade-wise? Or am I looking at data between and against others? So one of the projects we're working on is an extended reality program to teach social communication, interview skills, agreeing, disagreeing. It teaches 181 different skills. And those skills are all to help eventually for me to get and keep a job in all different levels, from middle school all the way through collegiate. When I look at those skills and I'm looking at assessing those skills, I'm comparing that student typically to two other students in the room and their average. I'm not comparing them to the national average for that skill. Why am I doing that? Because a lot of social skills are very context dependent. So it depends on where I am, how I act. I'm going to act very differently in my peers than I am to a professor or to a moderator. I'm going to be a very different person. So context matters when I'm looking at data. Culture matters. Where I'm coming from, what kind of experiences I've had as compared to you. Just like Dr. Rob had said earlier, it depends a lot in looking at that in an administrative and an educational piece, in looking at all of the pieces and making sure they all come together. And then also looking at, okay, am I using this data now? Like, why am I collecting all this data? Why am I analyzing all this data? Is the data usable now? Because if it isn't, I'm gathering the wrong data. I want to be able to have my teachers, my universities, my administrators make changes immediately. I want to be able to, as Dr. Hem said, I want to be able to individualize, not track. Because a lot of times data analytics can get into, this student's on the track for, they're going to graduate on time. This student's on the track for, they probably won't make it. So now I've decided already that this kid isn't going to make it. So typically, less attention is given to that child, or a huge amount of attention is given to that child, and that child already feels overwhelmed. So we have to look at all of the different factors and what our data is coming from. We are actually trying to get all of the different, like ChatGPT, you can always see where the data sources now are on. Like on Copilot at the end, when it gives you an answer, it tells you their data sources. We'd like those data sources to tell us where the data came from, how many people are from what culture, how many people were sourced, where is this all coming from, so that we know if it's reliable, if it's biased, before we start using that data.
You sort of set me up for the next segment. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Maggie. Data. You mentioned biases. So we're going to open up or go to that elephant in the room and talk about ethics in the use of AI in higher education. And we're going to address that from a couple of different ways. We're going to get back to data and biases or potential biases from the data. But first, let's just start where a lot are very much interested with students using AI tools in the course room. Let's talk about the ethical situations that could come from that. Any panelists? Everyone looks at you, Dr. Hema. I don't know why. Why did they do that?
You want to talk? Yeah, fine.
No. We selected you. Go ahead.
Fine. So now if you see that many students have been using ChatGPT in the classrooms, if you give some assignments. So what we do in Woxsen, so we created an AI assessment policy. So we created a scaling level like scale 0 to scale 4. Scale 0 in the sense like, as I am a professor, I teach introduction to machine learning to my students. So I have kept 3 assignments in my course outline. My first assignment I kept as scale 0. In that case, I just give the information to my students that it is the assignment where you are going to write it in my classroom itself without using no AI tools. So that once they're written in the class, I will evaluate and I can close it. Then come to scale 1, I'll say that you can use ChatGPT, get some problem statement and come to my class to the next day. So they will have ChatGPT and they'll use the problem. For example, if I give a topic on sustainability, they'll check and they'll come with the sustainability problem statement. And in my class, I will do a group discussion with my students and we can get a lot of solutions to that. So in that way, I can, with my knowledge, my students are going to use the ChatGPT or any kind of AI tool so that it has been well versified and I am aware of that, how much my students has been using the ChatGPT in my classroom. Like that, I can scale it level wise. Like 25%, scale 2, 50%, scale 3, 75%, and scale 5, 100%, I can give the assurance to that. You can use ChatGPT to do some kind of research and can kind of prepare the thesis and you can submit. So like that, I can make some assignments to that. In my course, I can do it. Same way, this assessment policy is being spreaded in my all 7 schools in Woxsen. So most of the professors are using that in their course outlines.
And what I like about that response was that I already know they're using it. I've already shared that they're using it with everyone. What we do a lot at KU is, so for our teachers learning to become teachers, they have to write lesson plans. Those lesson plans aren't very individualized when they start most of the time. So we have them put the lesson plan into something like Poe or ChatGPT or Copilot. And when they put the lesson plan in there, we ask them to have the lesson individualize it for a very specific student. We know that the better the prompting that happens, the better the output. So we teach them, how do you write really good prompts? I want a lesson for a 3rd grader who has dyslexia, who is from the Navajo tribe, who understands only these words, and I want it to only be 5 minutes long, and I want it to include 3 activities that integrate technology, and I want it to have all of the multisensory pieces involved that the student would need. That's a really long prompt, but it's going to get me a much better output than write me a lesson in 3rd grade on reading. So having that long prompt, then the teacher has to go in and say, okay, based on this, what did it miss? What did ChatGPT miss? What should have been there that wasn't there? What did it include that you think is not going to work for the students you've worked with in the past? Another example, we've done a lot of communications when we're teaching some of the communication programs, taking your resume, putting your resume into ChatGPT, you just attach it, and then asking it, or Copilot, or whatever you want to use, but then asking it, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but asking it to write a letter of recommendation or to write a cover letter for the student for a job. So here's my resume, write me a cover letter for application to the University of Kansas. If I'm more specific and say exactly what specific skills I want it to pull out, so make sure to tell them how good I am with working with new AI and innovation. It will pull out all of those things. It will create a cover letter for them that's actually pretty accurate. It will even go to the University of Kansas website, and it'll tell them at the bottom and pull what the University of Kansas is looking for and put that in that cover letter. Now the job as a teacher that I'm going to tell them to do is, great, here's a cover letter. Show me what's accurate about you and what's not accurate about you and why. So it's the different way in which we are going to be using all of our knowledge in the future. We need to be teaching them that as opposed to output. I think of AI as my personal secretary or my personal assistant, and teaching students the same. It's my personal assistant. Things that I don't have time to get done, it can do for me. But I have to be the final decision maker and the final person going through that and making sure it's accurate and making sure the data source is good and making sure it's not biased.
So one thing I can share, not necessarily from the teaching slant, at least in that explicit sense, is that my team recently, or actually still, is undergoing a transition to a new coding environment and a new infrastructure. And so these are a group of data scientists that did not grow up in a Gen AI environment in the college setting, but it has proven to be an exceptionally crucial tool in rapidly upskilling, and not just upskilling in terms of, can you convert this code for me, but it's also quite good at helping them apply and then subsequently implement the various new strategies and codings and techniques that they've learned. But to spawn off of what you said, one of my initial concerns was, I understand that they can use the tool to convert the code, and this is going to be a new language, but I want them to take a step back and make sure that they're not just getting the output, but they're really developing that cognitive understanding of that new coding structure, that new coding language, and that new infrastructure. The example that I used for them was, well, you can use ChatGPT or whatever and come up with the new code, the right solution. But I encourage you to follow some of those links into the Stack Overflow threads, because one, it's often very useful. You'll pick on some things that were missed, but it's also immensely entertaining to watch some of those threads and read through those. And I didn't want the AI to diminish that process, that sort of humanistic process of it, of saying, oh wow, this is how developers come to that right solution.
Right, right. And so with all of these examples, we're talking about taking the tool, AI, use it as a tool, helping the students to understand how to use the tool most effectively as well, correct? In our university, we do the same thing. In our assignments, we ask the students to go, we build it into the assignment, go and use an AI tool. ChatGPT can be the choice. Identify what ChatGPT brings back, analyze it, break it apart. Why was it correct? Why do you think it's incorrect? How can you alter the information or even make it better? That's that critical analysis piece that we should be teaching our students to do and to apply as well, right? Exactly. So we earlier this week, yesterday, seems like a whole week ago, yesterday, we had the education roundtable. And in the education roundtable session, I asked the question, how many individuals in the session are professors, instructors? Let me ask this of the audience, raise your hand. How many are professors, instructors? Keep your hands up. How many individuals have researched for the area where you teach how AI is impacting those fields that individuals will go into of what you teach? And you can drop your hand if you haven't researched it, okay? We still have a good number of hands up. Thank you. You can put your hands down. The main point is this. In the educational area, we are here to prepare students to step into their career fields, their career directions. How can we do that effectively if we don't know ourselves? How AI is impacting that field, that area, and therefore how can we teach the individuals and the students to be prepared to step into the career. And so this is what we're going to talk about now, panelists. When it comes to the augmented environment, right, of where we're going, what's our responsibility? What should we be doing? Number one, to prepare ourselves as instructors, professors, institutions of higher education, or even grade school, high school as well. And then how do we prepare our students as well to be prepared for the augmented career environment? Any panelists?
Okay. Oh, perfect. I would say that one of the ways we need to do it is through critical thinking. A lot of the output that's coming out, we need to be able to say, is this accurate, is this not accurate? Because I don't know what I don't know. So if it pulls out something that is totally outside of my wheelhouse, I'm not going to know if it's right or not. And I might put it out there for the world as fact when it's not. So knowing what you don't know. And then I would also say, making sure when you put anything with AI or use, that there's a component of it that they understand where this information is coming from and whether those sources are valid. I love custom chat GPT. I use it all the time with my students because I can decide where those resources are being pulled from. I can just have my textbook be the main resource for where they get all their answers. There's one that has 50,000 different highly verified educational resources, and it'll only go from those resources like IRIS or OSEP to get that information and give you your answers. So where am I getting my source information? Am I using those critical thinking skills? Am I still making sure people can collaborate and carry on and kind of project what they know to others so that we are becoming an inclusive culture that really is meeting everyone's needs?
Yeah, so I would say from an employer perspective, working with those already in the field after they've got their degrees, that I'm encouraging my team to develop at least an acceptable theoretical understanding of the large language models. For a long time, for example, machine learning was deemed a black box. No one knew how it worked, or so-called no one knew how it worked. And then over time, most of those models now have tools in them to where you can interrogate the model, you can figure out why it's working, you can look at the importance of the features, and you look at partial dependent plots and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of great research right now, some of which was mentioned in some talks this morning on the next generation of LLM being more interpretable in that fashion. And I think when we're working with our end users, I think that primary responsibility going forward is to not use it blindly, but develop that sufficient level of knowledge to alleviate those fears and concerns that those end users may have about using that technology.
My suggestion is joint research between the faculty and students, and making this motivate the students to write research articles and even publish articles in the magazines. That helps them to learn a lot of new emerging technologies currently, what's happening in the industry. This is one thing. Second thing is like making the students to go and attend workshops, conferences, whatever there, and also make them to connect with the LinkedIn to build a network. That helps them to engage with a lot of industry experts, and also they can learn a lot of things from them. So that is what my suggestion, I want to say this.
And the only other thing I'd add to all of that is also making sure in the end result that we are really, I don't know the right word for this, that we're just making sure that students, when they're doing the critical thinking, that when we're using, that we use AI when AI is appropriate to use, but we don't use it when we don't need to. Like AI is not the source and the end all for everything. I'm not going to use AI to teach certain things. I'm not going to use AI to assess certain things because it's not the best tool. But when it is the best tool, let's use it. So let's not be afraid of it either.
Very good. I think I would add on as well, and I shared the example in the earlier session. In our university, myself and my team members received the UFP grant, and we used some of those funds to create a 3-part webinar series so that we could help to spread the awareness of AI tools and how to effectively use them as well. The sessions were for students, for administrators, for faculty, for community as well. We opened it up. The main point, we took the initiative to create the webinar series, and we can make that available if anyone would like it as well. It was a 3-part series. First part was on using AI toward developing your self-efficacy, your self-confidence. The second webinar series of the series was on using AI to promote your team's success, your business success. How do you use it in a business environment? We're preparing our students to do exactly that, right? The third of the 3-part series was using AI tools for your leadership, self-efficacy, building your skills as a leadership as well. So we prepared those and we provided the webinar live, or we used Zoom to do it. We're a virtual organization, but they still live on because we still are sharing out those videos for replay for individuals to take into use. So that is the way, again, faculty, administration, educators should be prepared themselves, and then making sure that students are prepared as well and aware in using the AI tools. And as you said, Maggie, using it correctly, or maybe not at all, if that's not the correct place for that tool's use in the first place. So we're going to have a real fun part with our panelists here. We call this the rapid fire session. And I get to ask you a question, guys, and I want you off the top of your head to give that answer. Are you ready? Okay, first question. What is one key takeaway you want the audience to remember about AI in higher education? One key takeaway.
That it's nothing to be afraid of. It's actually a tool that we can use effectively.
I think my response would be that AI is not just generative AI, but it includes a full ensemble of machine learning algorithms and so on and so forth that have been around for a long time. So it's not something new on the scene. It's just something more developed and sophisticated.
My side is it's going to be a game changer in higher education. So we have to adapt to it and we have to use it, how innovative we can use it in the education sector. Thanks.
And if I was to answer that question, I would say do not wait on someone else to take the initiative to inform individuals about AI. You can do that yourself, okay? Key takeaway. All right, second question. Panelists, are you ready? Okay, second question. Describe your vision for the future of higher education in an AI-augmented world in one sentence.
Okay, I'll go first on this one.
So we're all looking at you, so jump in.
Sure. I think that my vision would include that the students in the higher education institution recognize that large language models are built upon human ingenuity, human innovation, and data that we produce. Going forward, humans will still need to do all of those things in order to continue to refine that product in that future that we're building.
My point is like, if you take any engineering or any other course, if you take, they are in a semester they are learning around 7 courses in that. So in each course we need to add one specific subject related to AI on that, how to use AI in that specific course. That helps them to understand that, how to implement. So if you do in this way, that they get a vast knowledge about AI and how to implement in various sectors. That's why.
I think it's important to let people know that AI has been in existence and they've been using it for forever already. Like PowerPoint, Excel, it already had an AI existing component to it. So this isn't anything new. And also when you're explaining that, to also explain that like the input I put into AI, I can kind of guarantee that that's more accurate. I can use AI in a way like in this presentation. I'll put in all of my answers to questions and say, what was the summary? Summarize my main idea. And then I can see, did it do that accurately? So we have the possibility to make people really good digital citizens and to be more accurate with what they put out there in the world, and AI can do that.
Exactly. How many people use Amazon? And Amazon recommends to you purchases, right? Even products you haven't purchased before. Hey, AI. My one sentence would be the vision of all higher education institutions working with industries, partnering with industries, researching with industries for us to integrate the future of AI in the best way so that we're preparing our students for education in the best direction that we can. That's my vision. So we have completed our panelist questions, guys, and we were pretty efficient with it, right? And so now we get to open up the floor for any questions that you may have as well. So if we can get assistance, we have a couple of questions up front. It could be one of our, okay, yes, they'll assist. Okay, we get passing mics.
Hi, I'm Nadeem from Texas State University, and a big fan of using AI in my classes, but from playing devil's advocate, when a parent comes to us and is going to say eventually, it's going to say, well, my kid can get all of that information as the technology matures. What added value are we giving the students, and what would our answer be to something like that?
I would right off the bat say relational. Like, there is a relational aspect that allows for more individualization than a machine can provide. Like, a machine can tell you that I grew up on a Navajo reservation, that I have multiple disabilities, that I love tech, that I love special education. It can tell you all of those things. And based off of that information, it might give you certain things I'm gonna do and certain things I'm not gonna do, certain information you need about me. But it might be wrong because it doesn't consider all these background pieces. It doesn't consider my life experiences, my family, my friends. So a human person can do that reasoning in a different way than a machine can. And a human person brings experiences that a machine can't quantify into emotions, feelings, that piece of taking that information and making it relevant for a very specific student. So I do think the relational piece is really important.
Yeah, so having been a professor before I did this line of work here, I would argue that that was probably always the case before generative AI. A mom or dad could come up and say, well, my kids can read these in books, so what are you doing? My kids can do a Google search, so what are you doing? And I think that responsibility falls on translating that information into insights and application. That inverted classroom, so to speak, become not only increasingly important, but increasingly feasible in the age of generative AI.
My suggestion is that the output which is provided by the AI tool can have the brainstorming in your classroom, and then we can have a lot of ideas can be generated through that. And that is the next level of thing which we can make it in that way.
And I would add on in saying that innovation doesn't come from the right and wrong. Innovation comes from thinking outside of the box. And so as instructors, professors, we're helping our students to apply that critical thinking to think what if and what about. And okay, this is what it is today, but I'm going to assist you into thinking and then structuring how to get to that next level. And that's where new innovations come from, and that's where the building of the students come from as well.
We all know that various institutions are at a different level of adaptation of the AI, and that's why pretty much most of higher education folks here are to explore where other institutions are. So thank you for you. I think you are an early adopter and you have a system that works. 2 questions. If you guys are expecting the students to adopt any of these tools, let's say ChatGPT or others, how about the licensing of these tools if the students and faculty are expected to use them? The licensing question. And the second thing, you both said, Virginia Tech and University of Kansas, that you collect data to make decision about admission perhaps, and I'm not sure on the other part, but how do you justify or assure the integrity of the data, because you're making decision based on these data collected. So what's your measure of data integrity check mark while you're working with that?
I would say that actually with the data decision, so we've been collecting data on people forever. I actually had a parent once come to me and said, don't assign my student a number. I was like, you do know your child has a social security number, right? Like, we've had these things in place for forever. We've been collecting data. When I meet a person, without even knowing it, my brain collects data on that person. Like, I'm deciding based on facial features, do you like what I'm saying? Do you not like what I'm saying? Are you happy with my content, or are you thinking this is a waste of my time? Like, we're always analyzing. Our brains just naturally do that. AI is always analyzing as well. We can't guarantee, and I think that's important to tell people right up front, what kind of data you are collecting. where that data is going. So you have to have really good data analytics for your universities. You have to have really good privacy laws. You have to make sure transparency is just imperative. So you have to make sure those safeguards are in place, just like we had to hundreds of years ago. So that hasn't changed. But I will say what has changed is our ability for that data to go somewhere. Our tech department came to us and said, you know, ChatGPT doesn't even know where that data is going, and they don't know how to get it back. And that blew my mind. I did not know that. I did not know that the people creating the data, places where it's stored, don't know how to get the data that's all up there sometimes. So there's an aspect of this that none of us understands yet. And that is scary. So I think we need to put in place what we do know. The privacy laws, the making sure we are looking at gathering data from different people with different disabilities, people from different cultures, people from different countries, people who speak different languages. All of that's gonna be important when we're looking at analyzing data, because it can't just be what we've been doing in assessments for social skills for years is eye contact, determining if a child can communicate for eye contact. If they make good eye contact, they're a good communicator. That actually, where I'm from, means disrespect. If I look you in the eyes, I'm being disrespectful. So that wouldn't be an accurate data point for anyone from where I'm from. So looking at those things too, whose data am I collecting? What is this data being used against? Who's the comparison? And is any of this relevant to the decisions I'm making? If I'm just collecting data for data's sake, I'm not collecting data correctly.
So in my team, we're quite privileged to have an embarrassment of resources, actually. And we've circumvented a lot of the data privacy issues by using open source models that we can run locally on resources that we have. Some of those can run on a local machine. Some of them we run on GPU resources that we have through the university. So we're never put into a position where we're actually pushing the data outside of the current infrastructure. Beyond that, what the license would look like, I really wouldn't have the answer for that. In terms of the data, as was mentioned, we've been collecting those data for a long time, and those data flows are fairly reliable. But one of the beauties about AI and machine learning is even if some of the data aren't quite reliable, or they're prone, or they have more errors than what you would like, much of those, or many of those algorithms are quite robust to those variances. And they're still really good at predicting whatever output that you are interested in. And so what we do a lot, instead of verifying so much of the data, which we feel pretty confident about, we do a lot in terms of interrogating the models and validating the outputs after the fact, so that we continually refine those processes going forward.
Do you have any data governance in place?
That's a loaded question. Sort of. We have, so not at the enterprise level, but because our analytics office is able to operate a little bit more independently, I won't say in a siloed fashion, but we've been able to develop a lot of data governance rules that work within our office. And it's a fairly large team. We're talking about 27 or 28 folks that do this sort of work. Broadly across the university, there are bits and pieces of that happening, but it's in various stages of development.
And I would say for ours, we have a whole center that just does that, and the IRB process as well. It gets involved in all of our data collection across the whole university.
I just wanted to add on, you had asked the question about licensing, and at my university, we do not have an enterprise level licensing for the AI tools for use by faculty and students. Some universities, middle school, grade schools do have that licensing. I do believe that when institutions do want to across the board say, yes, we are using these tools, then the institutions should work with the vendors to get the enterprise level licensing to make that available. Okay, next question.
Just letting you know, this is a 2-minute warning, last question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heard definitely a big part where it's, ultimately generative AI and the like is a tool, and really the encouragement of the critical thinking aspect of this. And if I may make the comparison to a calculator, for years been, hey, great, here's a calculator. It allows you to do more math, harder math, even faster, but still it's a computer, garbage in, garbage out. You should kind of have this expectation as to about where your answer should be before you get the answer. So if you get a bogus number, you're like, oh, I put something in wrong. Problem I'm running into, especially with the introductory classes, the higher level classes are great, but the introductory level classes, you're teaching the fundamentals. They don't yet have that point of information to be able to decipher garbage in, garbage out. And so I guess where I'm really struggling, especially as we move into this age of online learning, where you also have completely remote students, is how do you, I guess, balance that with the ease of access to generative AI? And I guess that's just a different education model altogether. And that's the higher levels, definitely. I've been able to grasp, I've been able to work with that, but it's those foundational, fundamental levels at the introductory level that I guess that's where I'm still really struggling as to how to implement this in a very effective way.
Okay,
Any
first,
insight on that?
Before anyone answers, we have like a minute left, so if you can answer in 20 seconds, go.
I would say like Khan Academy, the Kamigo, similar idea of you either have somebody who's guiding them through the whole process, the AI process, whatever that is, or you have the ability to only input their information, their knowledge, not gather knowledge from other people. So here's my knowledge, it goes in, and I ask it to do something with my knowledge alone.
Fantastic. And then we can talk more afterwards as well. So I would like to say thank you to our panelists, Dr. Hema, Dr. Rob, Dr. Maggie, I'm Dr. Karen Ivey, and thank you as well. Take care.